The envelope was already open when I found it. Torn at the corner, crumpled slightly like someone had handled it in a hurry. My VA disability check, $1,847, was gone. And my brother Ethan stood in the kitchen doorway, coffee in hand, smiling like nothing in the world was wrong. I froze. The mailbox key was still in my hand, cold metal pressing into my palm. I'd just gotten back to Tulsa after 3 months at the VA hospital in Oklahoma City. My leg still ached from the surgery, the kind of deep, bone-tired pain that makes you walk slower than you want to. I'd driven 2 hours just to pick up my mail, to handle one simple thing on my own. And this was what I came home to. "Morning, brother," Ethan said, leaning against the doorframe. He looked good. Too good. New sneakers, the kind that cost $200. A Carhartt jacket I'd never seen before. His truck in the driveway had a lift kit that definitely wasn't there last time I visited. "Ethan," I said slowly. "Did you open my mail?" He laughed. Not nervous, not guilty, just casual. Like I'd asked him if he'd eaten the last slice of pizza. "Oh, that? Yeah, I thought it was mine. You know how Mom puts everything on the counter." I stared at him. We didn't look alike. Never had. Ethan was the one who stayed home after high school, worked part-time at the auto shop, lived in Mom and Dad's basement until he was 26. I was the one who enlisted at 18, did 2 tours in Afghanistan, came back with a Purple Heart and a limp I'd carry for the rest of my life. "It had my name on it," I said. "Yeah, I saw that after." He shrugged. Took a sip of coffee. "I'll pay you back, man. Relax. Relax." The word hung in the air between us like smoke. I'd been blown up by an IED outside Kandahar. I'd watched my best friend bleed out in the sand while we waited for a medevac that came too late. I'd spent the last year learning how to sleep without hearing explosions every time I closed my eyes. And my brother, the one who'd never left Oklahoma, who'd never spent a single night wondering if he'd see the sun rise again, was telling me to relax. Pause right here. You don't want to miss the climax of this story. Hit the subscribe button and ring that notification bell now. Drop your city and state in the comments so I can shout you out. And let me know. Have you ever been pushed aside by the very people who were supposed to? I didn't say anything else to Ethan that morning. I just turned and walked out. My hands were shaking, not from anger yet, but from something colder. Realization. Because that envelope wasn't the first one. It was just the first one I'd caught. I sat in my car in the driveway, engine off, staring at my phone. I opened my banking app. The VA deposits were automatic, every month on the 1st. I scrolled back. March. No deposit. April, no deposit. May, June, July, nothing. 6 months. 6 months of checks I never saw. My chest tightened. I'd been wondering why I was so broke. Why I couldn't afford my medications. Why I'd been sleeping in my car outside the VA hospital some nights because I couldn't make rent on the studio apartment I'd been trying to keep in Oklahoma City. I thought I was just bad with money. I thought it was the PTSD, the brain fog, the days I couldn't get out of bed. But it wasn't me. It was him. I called the VA hotline. A woman answered, voice tired but kind. I asked about my benefit payments. She put me on hold. When she came back, her tone had shifted. "Sir, your checks have been cashed. All of them. Endorsed and deposited at a Wells Fargo branch in Tulsa." "I didn't cash them," I said. Silence. Then, "Sir, if someone else has been accessing your benefits, that's federal fraud. You need to file a report." I hung up. My hands were still shaking, but now the cold was turning into something else. Something sharper. I opened Instagram. Ethan's profile was public. He posted everything. New rims on his truck, March 15th, weekend trip to Branson, Missouri, April 10th. A gym membership at the bougie CrossFit place downtown, May 3rd. Designer sunglasses. Dinners at Mahogany, the steakhouse where entrees start at $50. Every single post lined up with a missing check. He'd been living off my pain. Off my sacrifice. Off the money the government sent me because I'd given parts of myself I'd never get back. And he smiled about it. I didn't know what I was going to do yet. But sitting there in that driveway in Tulsa, Oklahoma, with my leg throbbing and my brother's laughter still echoing in my head, I knew one thing for certain. Ethan thought I'd let this go. He thought I was still the guy who stayed quiet, who kept the peace, who carried the weight so no one else had to. He was wrong. My name is Marcus Webb. I'm 32 years old, and for most of my adult life, I've been the one people could count on. The dependable one. The strong one. In my family, that label stuck to me the way mud sticks to boots, permanent, expected, unquestioned. I enlisted in the Army right out of high school in Tulsa. Not because I had some burning patriotic fire, though I loved my country, but because I needed structure. Purpose. A way out of a house where I always felt like the invisible son, the one whose accomplishments were met with nods instead of celebrations. Ethan, 2 years younger, was the one they worried about. The one they protected. The one whose failures were always softened with excuses. When I shipped out to Afghanistan in 2012, Ethan was still figuring out whether he wanted to finish his associate's degree at Tulsa Community College. He dropped out 3 months into my first deployment. Mom called me on a satellite phone to tell me not to worry about him, that he just needed time to find himself. I was in Kandahar province, pulling security on supply convoys, and she was asking me to send encouraging messages to my brother who couldn't handle a spring semester. I did it anyway. I always did. My second tour changed everything. June 2014. We were moving through a village outside Kandahar when the IED went off. I don't remember the explosion itself, just the aftermath. Dust in my mouth, ringing in my ears so loud I thought my skull had cracked, and my leg bent at an angle legs aren't supposed to bend. My best friend, Corporal Danny Ruiz from San Antonio, didn't make it. I did, barely. They sent me to Landstuhl, Germany, then Walter Reed in D.C., then finally back to the VA hospital in Oklahoma City. 7 surgeries. 14 months of physical therapy. A Purple Heart I kept in a drawer because looking at it made me feel like I'd failed somehow. And a disability rating of 70%, which meant a monthly check of $1,847 to help cover the medications, the therapy, the life I was trying to rebuild from pieces that didn't fit together anymore. That money wasn't luxury. It was survival. It paid for the pills that kept the nerve pain from feeling like my leg was still on fire. It covered rent on the tiny studio apartment near the VA hospital where I could walk to my therapy appointments. It bought the groceries I could barely afford to eat because some days the PTSD made my stomach twist so hard I couldn't keep anything down. And Ethan had been stealing it. For 6 months. While I was sleeping in my car because I thought I'd mismanaged my budget. While I was skipping doses of gabapentin because I couldn't afford the refill. While I was lying to my caseworker about why I looked so tired, so thin, so defeated. My brother, the one who never spent a single night away from the comfort of our parents' house, had been cashing checks meant to keep a combat veteran alive. I sat in that driveway for an hour, maybe longer, staring at my phone. Ethan's Instagram glowed back at me like a neon sign advertising everything I'd lost. March, his truck with new rims, caption upgrades. April, him and his buddies in Branson, holding drinks at some lakeside bar. May. A selfie at a steak dinner, a perfect ribeye on a white plate. June, him at the gym, flexing, talking about his fitness journey. My fitness journey was relearning how to walk without a cane. The worst part wasn't even the money. It was the arrogance. The way he posted it all publicly, as if he'd earned it. As if his life of comfort and convenience had somehow produced success instead of theft. I thought about my parents. How they'd react if I told them. I already knew. They'd minimize it. They'd say Ethan was struggling, that he didn't mean any harm, that family forgives family. They'd ask me to let it go, to be the bigger person, to remember that Ethan wasn't as strong as me. They'd been saying that my whole life. But this time, being strong didn't mean staying silent. This time, it meant making sure Ethan faced every single consequence he'd spent 6 months running from. I finally started the car. My hands were steady now. I had a plan forming, quiet and precise, the way we used to plan missions overseas. Ethan wanted to play hero at the Veterans Day ceremony next week, shaking hands and pretending he understood sacrifice. I'd let him have his moment. And then I'd take everything back. I didn't go back inside the house. Instead, I drove to the Wells Fargo on 41st Street, the one near Woodland Hills Mall where I used to cash checks before the VA switched everything to direct deposit. The branch manager, a woman named Patricia with graying hair and reading glasses on a chain, recognized me from before. "Marcus," she said, smiling. "It's been a while. What can I help you with?" I showed her my VA card and explained the situation. Her smile faded fast. She disappeared into a back office and returned 10 minutes later with a stack of photocopies. Check images. 6 of them, spanning March through August. Each one made out to Marcus A. Webb. Each one endorsed on the back with a signature that looked nothing like mine. I stared at the signatures. They were sloppy, rushed, the kind of forgery a teenager would make. The M in Marcus looped wrong. The web was too wide, letters disconnected like someone had traced them separately. "This isn't your signature," Patricia said quietly. "No, ma'am." She leaned forward. "Mr. Webb, this is federal fraud. VA benefits are protected. Whoever did this committed a felony." I already knew who did it. But seeing the evidence, the physical proof that my brother had walked into this very building 6 times and pretended to be me, made something inside me harden into stone. "Can I get copies of these?" I asked. She nodded. "I'll print them now. And Marcus, you should file a police report. Today." I left the bank with the papers folded in my jacket pocket. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom, *Ethan said you're upset about something. Don't make a big deal out of nothing. We'll talk later, *. Nothing. She called 6 months of stolen disability checks nothing. I opened Instagram again. Ethan's most recent post was from yesterday. A photo of him at Kilkenny's Irish pub downtown, surrounded by friends, holding a beer, grinning. The caption, *living my best life. Grateful *. I scrolled further. Every post, every story, every check-in told the same story. March 10th, new rims. Check deposited March 1st, April 8th, Branson trip. Check deposited April 1st. May 5th, steak dinner at Mahogany. Check deposited May 1st. June 12th, CrossFit membership post. Check deposited June 1st. July 19th, designer Ray-Bans. Check deposited July 1st. August 3rd, weekend in Dallas. Check deposited August 1st. He wasn't even trying to hide it. He was celebrating it. I screenshot every post. Every caption. Every tagged location. I saved them all into a folder on my phone labeled evidence. Then I called the VA Inspector General hotline. The agent who answered took my information, asked me to email the check images and screenshots, and opened a case number on the spot. "Mr. Webb," he said, voice steady and professional, "benefit theft is taken very seriously. We'll coordinate with local law enforcement. Expect contact within 48 hours. I thanked him and hung up. Next, I called my buddy Kyle, another vet who'd served with me in Kandahar. He worked with a veterans advocacy group in Tulsa now, helping guys navigate the VA system and transition back to civilian life. When I told him what happened, he didn't even hesitate. "Marcus, we're handling this. And we're doing it publicly. Veterans Day ceremony is next Tuesday at Guthrie Green. Ethan signed up to volunteer, right? Yeah, I said. Mom sent me the flyer. He's handing out programs, playing the proud brother. Kyle's voice went cold. Not anymore. By the time I pulled into a gas station parking lot on Peoria Avenue, the plan was forming. Ethan wanted to stand in front of veterans, in front of the community, and pretend he understood sacrifice. I'd make sure everyone knew exactly what he'd sacrificed. My future. My dignity. My survival. And I'd do it where it hurt the most. The next morning, I met Kyle at a Starbucks on Cherry Street. He slid a folder across the table before I even sat down. VA Inspector General moved fast, he said. They pulled the full transaction records. Every deposit, every location, every timestamp. I opened the folder. Inside were enhanced images of the 6 forged checks, blown up so the signatures were crystal clear. Beneath each one was my actual signature from my VA ID card, my service records, my discharge papers. The difference was obvious. Damning. My real signature was tight, controlled. The M in Marcus had a sharp angle. The web connected smoothly, muscle memory from signing hundreds of military documents over 8 years. Ethan's forgeries looked like a child had copied them in crayon. The letters wobbled. The spacing was uneven. On 2 of the checks, he'd even spelled my middle initial wrong, writing E instead of A. Kyle tapped one of the images. This is the May check. Cashed at the Wells Fargo on 41st. Teller didn't ask for ID because he used the mobile deposit scanner at the drive-thru. He didn't even go inside? Nope. Did it from his truck. Took a picture of the check, deposited it through the app, then probably drove straight to Mahogany for that $50 steak. I felt my jaw tighten. Kyle pulled out another sheet. A timeline. Each check matched to one of Ethan's Instagram posts, side by side, impossible to deny. March 1st, $1,847 deposited. March 10th, Instagram post, new rims, who dis? Fire. April 1st, $1,847 deposited. April 8th. Branson trip photos, weekend vibes. May 1st, $1,847 deposited. May 5th, steak dinner, treating myself right. The pattern was perfect. Clinical. Like evidence laid out in a courtroom. This isn't just theft, Kyle said quietly. This is identity fraud, forgery, and stolen federal benefits. The VA Inspector General already flagged it for the U.S. Attorney's Office. If they prosecute, Ethan's looking at up to 5 years federal prison. 5 years. The number hung in the air between us. I thought about Ethan in the kitchen, smiling, telling me to relax. I thought about my parents, who'd spent my whole life protecting him from consequences. I thought about the nights I'd slept in my car because I couldn't afford rent, while he posted gym selfies funded by my disability checks. What happens next? I asked. Kyle leaned back. Tulsa PD is issuing a warrant. They'll probably execute it this week. But here's the thing, Marcus, you can still pull back. If you don't cooperate, this gets harder for them to prove. Your family's going to pressure you. They're going to tell you to drop it, to forgive him, to keep it quiet. I looked at the forged signatures again. Sloppy. Arrogant. He hadn't even tried to do it right because he never thought he'd get caught. He thought I'd stay silent. He thought I'd be the strong one who carried the weight, the way I always had. I'm not pulling back, I said. Kyle nodded. Good. Because you're not just fighting for yourself. Every vet who's ever been stolen from, every family member who thinks they can get away with this, you're setting the precedent. He slid one more paper across the table. A victim impact statement form. Fill this out, he said. Tell them what those 6 months cost you. Not just money. Everything. I took the form, folded it carefully, and put it in my pocket next to the check images. Ethan wanted to play the proud brother at the Veterans Day ceremony. I'd make sure he understood exactly what pride costs when it's built on lies. Veterans Day was a week away, and Ethan had no idea what was coming. The ceremony was scheduled for 11 a.m. at Guthrie Green, the big park downtown where Tulsa held all its community events. Every year, the city honored local veterans with speeches, a color guard, and a moment of silence. This year, Ethan had volunteered to help with setup, handing out programs and American flags to families. Mom had texted me the flyer 3 days earlier. Asterisk, your brother's volunteering at the Veterans Day ceremony. So proud of him. You should come asterisk. I didn't respond. What she didn't know was that Kyle had already coordinated with the ceremony organizers. The Tulsa Veterans Coalition, a nonprofit that ran the event, had a strict policy. Stolen valor and veteran exploitation were taken seriously. When Kyle explained the situation, their director, a former Marine named Sandra Ortiz, didn't hesitate. Bring the evidence, she'd said. We'll handle the rest. On Sunday night, Kyle and I met Sandra at a coffee shop on Boston Avenue. She was in her 50s, gray hair pulled back tight, eyes sharp enough to cut glass. She reviewed everything, the forged checks, the Instagram posts, the VA Inspector General's case file, the timeline Kyle had built. She didn't say much while she read. When she finished, she closed the folder and looked at me. Marcus, I'm sorry this happened to you. Thank you, ma'am. Here's what we're going to do, she said. Ethan's scheduled to hand out programs at the entrance. We'll let him do that. But when the ceremony starts, we're calling you to the stage. You're going to be recognized as a Purple Heart recipient. My chest tightened. I hadn't expected that. And when you're up there, Sandra continued, we're going to make an announcement. A reminder that veteran benefits are protected by federal law, and that anyone caught stealing from a veteran will be prosecuted to the fullest extent. We won't name Ethan. We don't have to. Everyone in your family will know. Kyle added, Tulsa PD is executing the warrant on Wednesday, 2 days before the ceremony. By the time Veterans Day comes, he'll already be facing charges. He'll either skip the event or show up and pretend nothing's wrong. He'll show up, I said. He's too arrogant not to. Sandra nodded. Then let him. Let him stand there and hand out flags while everyone watches you get honored for your service. Let him feel what it's like to be exposed. I looked at the folder on the table, at the evidence that proved my brother had stolen from me while I fought to survive. For a moment, I felt something crack open inside me, not anger, but clarity. Ethan had spent 6 months living off my sacrifice. He'd posted it online, bragged about it, smiled through every lie. Now, he'd stand in front of the entire Tulsa veteran community while the truth surrounded him like a spotlight he couldn't escape. Sandra handed me a printed program for the ceremony. My name was listed under Purple Heart recipients, to be honored. You've earned this, she said. Don't let him take that from you, too. I folded the program and slipped it into my jacket. Wednesday came fast. Kyle texted me at 9:47 a.m., warrant executed. Ethan in custody. Booked and released. Arraignment set for Deck 3 RD *. I stared at the message for a long time. It was real now. There was no going back. And in 5 days, at Guthrie Green, in front of everyone, Ethan would realize exactly what he'd lost. The night before Veterans Day, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed in the studio apartment I'd finally been able to afford again, staring at the Purple Heart in its small velvet case on the dresser. I hadn't opened it in months. The medal itself was simple, a purple ribbon, a gold-bordered heart with George Washington's profile. But holding it felt like holding weight I didn't know how to carry. It reminded me of everything I'd lost and everything I'd never get back. June 14, 2014. The day the IED went off outside Kandahar. I remember the dust cloud, the ringing in my ears so loud I thought I'd gone deaf, and the way my leg looked afterward, bent wrong, shattered. I remember Danny Ruiz lying a few feet away from me, his eyes open but already gone. They gave me the Purple Heart 3 months later at Walter Reed. My parents flew out to DC for the ceremony. Ethan didn't come. He said he had to work. The truth was, the medal didn't make the pain stop. It didn't fix the nightmares or the flashbacks or the mornings I woke up thinking I was still in Afghanistan. It didn't pay for the gabapentin that kept the nerve pain from feeling like my leg was on fire, or the therapy sessions where I learned how to breathe through panic attacks in grocery store parking lots. The VA disability checks did that. $1,847 a month. It wasn't much, but it kept me alive. And Ethan had stolen it. For 6 months, I thought I was failing. I thought the reason I couldn't afford my medications was because I was bad with money, because the PTSD had broken something in my brain that made me forget how to budget. I skipped doses. I slept in my car outside the VA hospital on nights I couldn't make rent. I ate 1 meal a day and told myself it was discipline, not desperation. I was ashamed. I didn't tell anyone. Meanwhile, Ethan was buying new rims and taking trips to Branson. I'd survived an IED blast. I'd held my best friend while he died. I'd learned to walk again after 7 surgeries. But my own brother, the one who'd never spent a single night away from the comfort of our childhood home, had stolen the money that kept me from falling apart. That hurt worse than the explosion ever did. I closed the Purple Heart case and set it back on the dresser. Tomorrow, at Guthrie Green, I'd stand on that stage. Not for revenge. Not even for justice. But because I needed to prove to myself that surviving my family was possible, too. And that silence wasn't strength. It was surrender. The call came Tuesday night, less than 24 hours before the ceremony. Mom. I almost didn't answer. But I knew if I didn't, she'd just keep calling. Marcus, she said the moment I picked up. Her voice was tight, strained. We need to talk about Ethan. There's nothing to talk about. Yes, there is. She exhaled sharply. He made a mistake. A stupid mistake. But you're blowing this completely out of proportion. I sat down on the couch, phone pressed to my ear, waiting. He didn't mean to hurt you, she continued. He was struggling. He needed help, and he didn't know how to ask. You know how he is. Yeah, I said quietly. I know exactly how he is. Marcus, listen to me. He's your brother. He's asterisk family. Asterisk, you can't just destroy his life over money. Over money. Like the $11,082 he stole was just loose change. Mom, that money kept me alive. It paid for my medications. It paid my rent. While he was stealing it, I was sleeping in my car. Silence. Then, you never told us that. I didn't think I had to. Her voice shifted, softer now, pleading. Sweetheart, I know you're upset. But pressing charges? Getting the police involved? That's too far. He'll have a record. He could go to prison. You're going to ruin his future. He ruined his own future, I said. Don't be cruel. Her tone sharpened. You've always been the strong one. You've always handled things. Ethan isn't like you. He's sensitive, he can't survive something like this. There it was. The same script they'd been reading my entire life. Ethan was fragile. Ethan needed protecting. And I was strong enough to carry the weight for both of us. Dad's voice cut in from the background. He must have been on speaker. Son, you're being selfish. It's not like he spent the money on drugs. He was just trying to get by. He was trying to get by on my disability checks, I said. Well, maybe if you'd been around more, he wouldn't have felt so desperate, Dad snapped. I felt something inside me go cold. I wasn't around because I was in Afghanistan, I said slowly. Getting blown up. So Ethan could stay home and steal from me in comfort. Mom started crying. Please, Marcus. Don't do this. Just drop the charges. We'll figure it out as a family. He'll pay you back. No, I said. Marcus. I said no. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from doubt. From relief. Because for the first time in my life, I'd stopped protecting him from the consequences he'd earned. Veterans Day morning came cold and clear. The sky over Tulsa was pale blue, the kind of November morning where your breath fogs in the air. I pulled into the Guthrie Green parking lot at 10:30 a.m. 30 minutes before the ceremony started. The park was already filling up. Families spread out on blankets. Kids waved little American flags. A local high school band warmed up near the stage, brass instruments glinting in the sunlight. And there, at the entrance, handing out programs with a smile, was Ethan. He wore a navy blue jacket and a red tie, playing the part perfectly. Shaking hands. Thanking people for coming. Acting like he understood what sacrifice meant. I stayed in my car for a moment, watching him. My chest felt tight, but my hands were steady. Kyle texted, "You ready?" I typed back, "Yeah." I stepped out of the car. I was wearing my dress uniform, the same one I'd worn at my promotion ceremony 8 years ago. The fabric still fit, though my shoulders felt heavier now. The purple heart ribbon sat just above my left pocket. I walked toward the entrance. Ethan saw me before I reached him. His smile faltered. His hand froze midair, holding a program he'd been about to pass to an elderly woman. I walked straight up to him. Didn't say a word. Just stood there, close enough that he had to look at me. "Marcus," he said quietly. "I didn't think you'd come." "I'm being honored today," I said. His face drained of color. Behind him, Sandra Ortiz appeared, clipboard in hand. "Ethan, we need you to step aside for a moment." "Marcus, you're wanted backstage." Ethan's eyes darted between us, panic spreading across his face like a stain. I didn't look at him again. I just turned and followed Sandra toward the stage. At 11 a.m., the ceremony began. The color guard marched. The national anthem played. Families stood with hands over hearts. Then Sandra stepped to the microphone. "Today," she said, her voice steady and clear, "we honor those who have sacrificed for our country. But we also want to remind everyone that our veterans' benefits are sacred. Protected by federal law. And anyone who exploits or steals from a veteran will face the full consequences of their actions." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Sandra continued. "We're honored today to recognize Staff Sergeant Marcus Webb, Purple Heart recipient, who served 2 tours in Afghanistan and was wounded in action defending this country." Applause erupted. I walked onto the stage, heart pounding. From where I stood, I could see Ethan at the entrance. His face was pale, his hands shaking as he clutched the stack of programs. And for the first time in 6 months, he looked exactly like what he was. Exposed. The weeks after Veterans Day moved faster than I expected. Ethan's arraignment was December 3rd. He stood in front of a federal judge at the Northern District Court in Tulsa and pled guilty to 1 count of theft of government funds and 1 count of forgery. The plea deal his public defender negotiated kept him out of prison, but barely. 18 months probation. 200 hours community service. Full restitution of $11,082, paid in monthly installments directly to me. And a permanent felony on his record. When the judge read the sentence, Ethan's shoulders sagged. Mom cried in the gallery. Dad stared straight ahead, jaw tight, saying nothing. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt finished. The truck he'd bought the lift kit for? Repossessed 3 weeks later when he couldn't make payments. The CrossFit membership, the designer sunglasses, the weekend trips, all gone. He moved back into my parents' basement, the same room he'd lived in since high school. My parents stopped calling me. At first, the silence hurt. But then I realized it was the healthiest thing they'd ever given me. Space. The VA deposited my back pay in January, $11,082, plus interest. I used part of it to pay off medical bills. The rest went into savings, untouched, protected. The Tulsa Veterans Coalition asked me to speak at their next event about benefit fraud awareness. I said yes. Kyle introduced me to other vets who'd been stolen from by family members, and slowly, quietly, I realized I wasn't alone. One afternoon in February, I ran into Ethan at a Walmart on 71st Street. He was in the cleaning supplies aisle, stocking shelves in a red vest. He saw me, froze, then looked down fast. I didn't say anything. I just kept walking. He'd made his choices. Now he was living with them. As for me, I found a new apartment near Riverside. It had a view of the Arkansas River, and on quiet mornings, I'd sit on the balcony with coffee and watch the water move. The nightmares didn't stop completely, but they came less often. I wasn't the same person who'd walked into my parents' kitchen and found that torn envelope. I was steadier now. Clearer. I'd survived war. I'd survived an IED blast. I'd survived losing my best friend. And I'd finally survived the one battle I never thought I'd have to fight, the one against my own family. Healing wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was just this: mornings by the river, therapy on Thursdays, and the quiet knowledge that I'd chosen myself when no one else would. And that was enough. 6 months after the sentencing, something unexpected happened. I was at a Veterans Coalition meeting in Broken Arrow when a younger guy approached me. He couldn't have been more than 25, wearing a faded army jacket and carrying a backpack that looked like it had seen better days. "You're Marcus Webb, right?" he asked. I nodded. "I heard you speak last month. About benefit fraud." He paused, eyes shifting to the floor. "My sister's been stealing my checks. For almost a year. I didn't know what to do until I heard your story." My chest tightened. "Did you file a report?" "Last week," he said. "VA Inspector General opened a case yesterday." He held out his hand. I shook it. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For not staying silent." After he walked away, Kyle came up beside me. "You know what you just did, right?" "What?" "You gave him permission to fight back." That moment stayed with me for days. I realized my story wasn't just about Ethan anymore. It was about every veteran who'd been exploited by the people they trusted most. Every person who'd been told to stay quiet, to forgive, to let it go because family is family. But family isn't a free pass to hurt people. And forgiveness doesn't mean erasing consequences. By summer, I'd spoken at 3 more events. The VA asked me to consult on a campaign about protecting veteran benefits. A local news station interviewed me for a segment on financial abuse. My inbox filled with messages from people I'd never met, veterans, spouses, advocates, all telling me their own stories of betrayal and survival. One message came from a woman in Muskogee whose brother had stolen her late husband's survivor benefits. Another from a guy in Norman whose parents drained his GI Bill account. Another from a single mom in Lawton whose ex had forged her signature on VA loan documents. Every story was different. But the pattern was the same. People who should have protected them didn't. And staying silent had only made the damage worse. I want you to pause for a second. Hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next story, and also tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing cities and states pop up in the comments. And if you've ever been pushed aside by the very people who were supposed to protect you, share your story below. You're not alone. And your voice matters more than you know. In September, I got a letter from Ethan. No return address, just my name and apartment number written in his handwriting. I almost threw it away. but something made me open it. Inside was a single page, handwritten. Marcus, I don't expect you to forgive me. I know what I did was unforgivable. I just want you to know I'm sorry. Not because I got caught, but because I hurt you. You deserved better. You always did. I'm trying to do better now. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I needed you to know. Ethan asterisk. I read it twice. Then I folded it and put it in a drawer. Maybe one day I'd respond. Maybe I wouldn't. But that wasn't the point. The point was that I didn't need his apology to move forward. I'd already done that on my own. By October, I'd saved enough to put a down payment on a small house near Jenks. It wasn't much, 2 bedrooms, a garage I could turn into a workshop, but it was mine. Fully mine. The day I moved in, Kyle helped me carry boxes. We stood in the empty living room, sunlight streaming through the windows, and he raised a beer. To new chapters, he said. I clinked my bottle against his. To boundaries. That night, I sat on the back porch and watched the sun set over Tulsa. The sky turned orange, then pink, then deep purple. Somewhere across town, Ethan was still working his shifts, still paying restitution, still living in that basement. And I was here. Free. Whole. Finally at peace. If you've ever had to choose yourself when your family refused to, know this, you're not selfish. You're not cruel. You're surviving. And that's the bravest thing you can do.